All right, so that's my editor. I don't know if you all can see it very well.
Can we all see clearly? I can see clearly. Can we all see clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to work with your knowledge of HTML. And you know, website basically are made up of shapes, made up of lines, made up of
please
text. Into that.
Mr. Help us increase the
of the editor.
Okay. View. Your view. Yeah, then appearance. Then zoom in. Zoom in.
Is it better
Okay,
now?
we go now.
Okay, so I was saying you have shapes, you have lines, and you have text. So you're going to start this evening with working with text and fonts. So I'm going to show you some text properties that can help make your text look very good. So let me start by adding a H1 tag. I'll call it "This is my head." Below to add a paragraph tag as well. I'll call it "This." Okay, let me just do a quick Lorem Ipsum filler text. This is my paragraph tag. Yeah, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so as I told you guys earlier, I always prefer to work with external style sheets. So if you look at the left pane of my editor, you see an index.html file. That's my index.html file right where I'm working. And right below you see an index CSS file. And that's my CSS file. And if you look here on line 7, where I have the on line 7, you find out that this is where I link my CSS to my HTML. Remember I said that the link tag is used to link a file. So you see rel. I said rel means relative, and then how is this file related to your HTML? The style sheet. Then href means hypertext reference. I mean, it's referencing that particular file. Like I said earlier, suppose this file main.css was inside this folder. CSS, I would have to do something like this: CSS / main.css. Saying, oh, I'm going into the CSS folder and I'm fetching the main.css file. But that's not where it is, so I'll just take that out and save my own. So I want to do some playing around with the text you have here. No, let me go back to my browser so you can see how this looks right now. Alright, so this is just how it looks. This is my heading, and then my text floating all the way to the end. So let's apply some styling to it. Alright. So of course, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to use colors. So whenever you want to start working with CSS, the first thing you should do is you style your body tag, your body element. This is the body element here on line 9. You apply a style to them. But what do you style? You just say the margin with the margin of 0 and a padding of 0. And let's go back to our HTML and what it looks like after we give it a margin and padding of 0. You notice that it became very close to the end of the screen, like it took away all the margin and the padding. And very briefly, I'm going to explain what margin I'm adding is to your document or to your website. All right, we're interested in styling our H1 and then our P. To make this even more interesting, I like to wrap things up in a div. So I'm going to add a div tag here, and I'll give it a class, and I'll call it my first div. I'll close my div tag. I'll take the closing div tag right below my paragraph, so it stays so the heading and the paragraph stays right. The heading and the paragraph stays right in the div. All right, so to style the heading, I'm going to do something real quick. I want to call the name of the div because the heading is inside the div. I'm going to call the name of the div first and say dot my first div. H1. I'm going to the color of light gray. I remember dot is the class name of the div, so dot my first div and H1 are both selectors. My first div, the class name, H1, the element name. This is how you apply styling to an element. Why am I doing this? Why do I have to wrap it in a div and then add a H1? Because I might have lots of H1 in my website. So if suppose I apply this style to just this H1, what happens when I have another H1? It means this style is going to affect the other H1, but I want it to affect just this H1 that is inside this div tag. So I have to call the parent first, which is my first div, the class name that you're seeing here, my first div, and then call the selector H1. Remember, selectors always have properties or CSS style rules are properties and value, and the property name followed by a colon followed by the value. All right, and give the font size of 30 pixels. Okay, that's it for now. Let's go back and see. And that's our heading. It's now a bit grayish in color. Well, let me change it to an obvious color like red. So red is F00. This is the hex code for colors. So in CSS, when you're working with colors, you could work with the color name. You could work with the hex code of the color or the RGB value of the color. So I like to use hex codes. So let's see how it looks like. So I like to make this bigger. So let's say it's going to be 50 pixels, just so we can see it bigger. So that's our heading looking all big and bold. So now, what did we apply? We had applied two properties to our heading. First is the color, and then the other is the font size. Now we can also do something to the font element. It's not enough to just add color and size. You could do some more styling to it. For example, you could transform it. Suppose you want all these to come in uppercase, for instance. You want to change all of that to uppercase. What do? You still go back to your styling and say something like this: text transform, and specify uppercase. And you remember at the end of every rule set, at the end of every property and value, you add a semicolon to say, oh, this line of code started here and ended here. because if you mistakenly remove the semicolon, you see what happens. There's a bit of a red thing here showing that the browser will not read this anymore. The browser assumes that your styling stops here in font size, so you always have to add this semicolon to close it, and then just to close that. So let's refresh and see. Our heading is now in all caps. So what are we doing right now? I'm showing you how to style text, because text is the major part of every website. There's no website that doesn't have text. Okay? No matter how minimal it's going to be, it's going to have some text added to it just so that the user can read something. Understand that in today's day and age, we do a lot of graphic work on websites, but regardless, text is still being used. So we must understand how we can style our text and make it look even more interesting. I'd like to know if you can all hear me. Am I being heard?
Yes, yes. I'm following. Yeah, following.
Okay. So move on. The next thing we want to look at, still styling our H1, is alignment. We want to know how to align our text. Suppose we don't want it to be aligned, want it to be aligned at the center, or maybe at the left, so at the right somewhere. There's a property for that, and it's called text align, and you could say center. So these are pretty much basic things that you are already familiar with if you have ever used a word processor before. So we would come to our browser and refresh, and now our heading is nicely placed at the top or at the center of our screen. What else can we do with that? Add some spacing to the letter. Maybe they are too close to each other. Let me increase this to 70 so it's see a bit bigger. Let's say we wanted our letters to have some spacing beside it. We didn't just want it to be all clustered the way it is, or wanted it to even be closer than how it's looking right now. We could do something about that. We'll add another property called letter spacing, and would give a number. Let's say we want to be 5 pixels, and then we save our work, go back to our browser and refresh. I'll see that it's a bit more spaced out now than how it was earlier. You can play with that a bit and say 10 pixels, and it just keeps spreading. And I think it's beginning to look like a magazine. Yeah, so we could do that with our heading. So slowly it's looking different than, let me try to comment this out very quickly, so see how it looks without the style. Okay, that's how to comment out. Let's go back and refresh, and boom, it's how our site will look like without our style sheet. So let me take out this comment and continue. All right, so that's how it looks. Okay. Now suppose we want it to be heavy. We don't want it to be this thin. We want it to have some weight, like bold. What do we do about it? We can still come and add another action, another property called font weight. And we can do one of two things. We can add the actual values in weight. It's from 100 to 900, or we could add the letter form, which is bold or bolder or lighter. I like to use bold. I found it really bold. And let's see what happens to our text. Oh, that's telling us that, oh, this is the boldest our text can be, so it can't be any bolder than what it is. Alright, so we're going to still do some things to this. We're not done with this. All right. So one very important thing to note is, you see me using pixels here and there. Um, or you want what really is a pixel? So a pixel is the tiny dots that make up a computer screen. Even our phone screens all have tiny dots. If you go really close to the old television sets of those days, and you'll see that there are dot on the screen. So each dot is called pixel, and that's the unit of measurement. That's one unit of measurement in CSS. So if you say 70 pixels, it counts 70 of those tiny dots and make your element, whatever you're applying that property to be 70 pixels. That's how to measure it. You can't just, every measurement always has a unit for measurement. So for CSS, the unit is pixels. There are other units of measurement, but we'll stick to pixels today. Okay, now another thing we could mention is font. Fonts have families. So the fonts are basically put in 3 families. If you look at a magazine, most times you find that the fonts are a bit different. Now, what's the name of the 3 families? One is serif, the other is sans serif, and the other is cursive. So very quickly, we're going to change our font and see how it changes to fit our work. So to change our font, we add a property called font family. There's a list of them. The browser has them all put up here. So you could choose anyone that fits your work. Let's choose the very first one: Arial, Helvetica, Sans serif. I would like you to observe the difference when I refresh my page. The font's going to look different right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you notice the difference?
Yes.
So what's the difference between a serif and a sans serif? So I think I'll just have to put both of these side by side so we'll take a look at it carefully. Let me go to my index.html. So this is my heading. Copy this, paste it here. So this is my second heading. So save that. Only it's a H2. H2, and save that. Let me apply some style. Sorry. To H2, so heading 2. But this time, I don't want the font to be a sans serif. Remember, this is the font family, sans serif. I want it to be a serif this time. So for a serif font, like this one. So this is serif font, Georgia, Times New Roman. Let me add another one so we'll see the difference between 3 of it. This will be my third heading of second is published out. My third heading, and I'll go back to my work. Let me make that a H3. H3, I'll save that. Yeah, I come back to my work. And I say H3. This time I want to make it a cursive font. So these are the major 3 font families. Let me change the color so to be a bit distinct. While this is, I make this black. Black is 000. That's the hex code for black. I can leave this as red, and I can make this yellow. X50. So I'll save that. Or let me keep gray. 7 family 666. Save that. It might not be so visible, so 444. Save that. Come up to a browser, fresh. Oh yeah. So let's look at them carefully. We'll notice something different about every one of them. They all look. So I want to take out this property. Take out this property. So cursive. It looks more like cursive. All right. The very first one, which is in black, H1, this is my heading, is a sans serif. Now, sans serif fonts how are different from serif in the fact that at their endings, they do not have that protruded elongation. So if you look at the T in this of sans serif and the T in this of serif, you found out that one of it, the one in red, which is serif, has some things around it curved at the edges, and at the base it has like the T standing on something, and it's the same for every letter. So that's how sans serif look like. And then the other one, which is that's how serif look like rather, and the other one which is sans serif, does not have anything at the edges. It's just a whole straight and neat and curved, and it doesn't have any curve at anywhere, just looking all straight and nice. And the third one, which is in gray, is cursive. And the ones that look more like they're written with a hand, not so straight, sometimes curved, sometimes bent. This kind of fonts are called cursive. So those are the three major font families you should know when working with websites. So fonts are actually in families. Yes, so let me take that out. That was just for a test. Okay, save that. Save that. I'll take this out as well. So I just did the illustration just to make you see the different font families that we have. I think we should stick to, I think I like sans serif. Okay. I'd like to take a minute to do something really quickly. I'll be back if you all don't mind, please. Do you hear me?
Okay. So thank you so much. While you sort that out, let me just come in. Okay, so are there any questions? Are there any questions, please? Do we have any questions? Do we understand everything that's been said so far? Can I get some response, please? Do we understand everything said so far, shared so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Your CSS is used to style your HTML basically, and you have so many properties you can possibly style. For your font alone, you have as many as let me try and share my screen quickly. For your for example, for your fonts, you have as many as 10 different properties you can style. Your font weight, your font size, your font width, your font type, your text transform, which we talked about, which allows you to you can underline your text like that and all that stuff. Okay, I think he's back. Okay, you're muted. You're muted, please. Okay, fine. All right. Welcome back. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry for the interrupt. I have to something real quick. Okay, so we are still looking at font. I think we're done with that. But before I move on to something else, I don't know, is there any question? Oh, one last thing with font. So we could add a style to it. Let's say font style, and if if you see, we have italic, we have normal, we have oblique, initial, inherit, and set. Alright, so we let's try italic and see how it looks like. So we'll have a font style set to italic. Go back to our browser, we'll refresh it, and you see it now better. So these are basic font properties that we have in our Microsoft Word, in our normal text editor. So something you should get familiar with, how to play with fonts. But first of all, you have to know how to use the colors, the font size, text transform. Text transform, not just uppercase, you could have sentence case. You could have capitalize, that's for a sentence case in Microsoft Word. So if we do this, we now have just the first letters being capital. We can leave it at lowercase, and they all stay lowercase. But let's take it back to how it was uppercase. So we can align our text to a particular part of the screen: left, right, center, justify, just like we do with our word processor. We can add spacing to our letters. So we want them to have some spacing, we want them to be spaced out. We can make it bold, we can make it thin. Let's say we want it to be lighter. We want it to be so bold, we want it to be lighter. Just change the font to lighter, and go back, refresh, and see. So it now looks thinner than it was earlier. I think it's a little better for me. Can add font family. Remember I said there are basically three major font families as long as design is concerned. Even if you're working in Photoshop and any other kind of design, you have serif, sans serif, and cursive. You also add some style into your font. Want it to be italic, want it to be normal. Set it back to normal or oblique, whatever we want. And just keep playing with it till we get really what we want. So I think that's fine for font. Before I continue, I'd like to know if anyone has a question. Just unmute yourself and speak and listen.
Are there any questions
Regarding fonts, we're about to go to something else right now.
Do we have any questions? I'm sure we've gone to some very lovely websites in the past, and you know, one of the things that makes websites stand out is their font type, right? You know, and
I just want to ask a question.
okay,
Emmanuel Lucigan from wrong.
Emmanuel, do you have a question?
Oh, not yet. Not yet. No, not yet, sir.
So we're all perfect. We all understand how to use the font properties and style our edit. Do we? So I'm moving.
All right.
Okay. So having done that, the next thing we're going to be looking at is we're looking at borders. Remember, our heading and our paragraph are both in a div tag called my first div. So let's add some. Now we're going to be looking at borders, padding, and margin. Let's add some borders, padding, and margin to it, so we really see how it looks like. First of all, it looks like we can't see. Looks like we can't see the div, but the div is somewhere around here. But we really can't see it. But let's add a border so we can see where the div starts and where it ends. So this is the class calling the div. Name of div is my first div. The class name my first div, and we are calling it my first div. You can see the class name here. let's add a border. How do you add a border? You call a property called border, add a colon, of course. Now to add a border, you have to specify the thickness of the border. Let's want it to be 10 pixels thick. You have to specify how you want your border to be. You want it to be solid, you want it to be dotted. So your border can either be solid or dotted. So you want it to be solid. And now specify a color for your border. Let's give it a dark gray, and then semicolon to say, oh, this line of code.
Sorry, can I interrupt you a bit? Can you talk about colors and this numeric thing you're writing? You're not writing the normal colors, but you're using combinations of order. Can you talk about that briefly, please?
Okay, yes. So your browser actually understands color in 3 different ways. CSS rules understand colors in 3 different ways. You can actually know the color by its name, and you can actually know the color by its hex code. What I'm writing right now is the hex code of the color. That means the hexadecimal code. So remember, programming mathematics, we understand that hexadecimals are numbers from 0 to 9 and letters A to F. So a mix of those numbers give a certain color, and the colors could also be in RGB. So CSS rules state that colors can come in the color name. For instance, if I want to have a gray color, I could just say gray, and that works. I want to have a black color here, I could just say black, and that works perfectly. But the thing here is this: colors have shades. There are shades to color. So if there are over 1,000 shades of gray, and there are different shades of black. So when you specify a color like red, black, green, it takes that particular color and sticks to it. What if you wanted another shade of black? You wanted a black that is not so dark. What do you? That's where hex code comes in. So it brings that limitation of having to have one shade of gray. So in my VS Code, I can do something like this. I could just say 333, and then when I hover the color in my mouse pointer, I see a color palette. This is called a color palette. And then I could take my pointer down, and depending on how dark or how light I want it to be, I could drag this maybe to the top. The top is where white is, so I can drag it up, it's getting lighter. I could drag it down and it's getting darker. So wherever I want it to be, I just leave it there. Boom, and it turns to an RGB. What's RGB? RGB means red, green, blue. Now, according to the color wheel and the color theory, every color comes out of these 3 basic colors: red, green, and blue. So a mix of red, a mix of green, a mix of blue will give a certain color. So right now, according to my text editor, a mix of red at 104 and green at 104 and blue at 104 would give you this this gray you're seeing here. What if I change this to 255? 255. It becomes blue now because I'm saying, oh, blue is at the highest. What if I change red to 255? A mix of red and blue now gives us pink. What if I change this to 255? When all at the base, that could the lowest value here is 0, and the highest value here is 255. So now a mix of these 3 colors is actually white. If I change this to hex code, now you're gonna see FFF. So when the colors are all at the highest, when you have red, green, blue at the highest, it's white 255. That's at the end of it. But when you have red, green, blue at the base, it's now here 255. When you have it at the base, 000, that's black. So very, very, very dark is at the base, at the bottom, and very, very, very white is at the top. I don't know if I'm clear about that. So I want to have a gray color here. Any question regarding that?
Okay, someone is asking a question, Amanda. She's asking if you can talk briefly about my first div.
Okay, Is it the styling or just the okay, let me talk about it from here. So inside our HTML tag, we had, of course, our HTML structure looking like this: the doc type, HTML head, and the body. And inside the body, I have a heading. I want to create a heading which is H1 and a paragraph, but I do not want them to stay on their own. I want them to be packed up in a box. I want them to be packed up somewhere so that when I want to style it, the box is like their parent. I can call the parent and then call the child. It's like someone who wants to call you by your name. The person calls your surname and then calls your first name, that kind of thing. So imagine if you walk into a room and your name is Victor, and then there are 10 people there, and then there are 3 people whose names are Victor. I just walk into a room and I'm like, Victor, come here. All 3 of them look at me like, what are you talking about? But when I say Victor Daniels, I'm now referring to a particular Victor who is the son of Daniel. I think that makes sense. So my first idea is like a parent to this heading and this paragraph. So that when I'm styling it in my CSS, I have to call the parent's name and then the parent name and then the child's name. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I can move on from there.
Yes.
Okay, so we added a border. And remember, I said a border must specify how thick you want your border to be. You must say if you want it to be solid or dotted. I'll make it dotted briefly, and I'll show you what it looks like. And then you must add the color of the border. I prefer to use hex codes. It's easier to work with. But you could, for the sake of the tutorial, let's use normal plain colors like this, so we don't get confused about colors. So gray, 10 pixels, solid gray. All right, let me go and see. Oops. Now you see that my first div has a border around it, and it's not so thick. Let me make it thicker so we could see it a little better. It's not very thick. This is 20 pixels here, and it's solid and it's gray. What if I want to make it dotted? I want a dotted border. So change that to dotted, and then save it, and go and see what it looks like. And we now have dotted borders all around. Okay, so let's go back to solid because that's the main thing. So that's one of the functionalities you could have. You can choose to have a border and make it dotted. Have it. Maybe you're doing a website for a school, maybe a children's school, that kind of thing, where you want children to see those kind of playful things. That's where you can use something like that. And borders mustn't always come top, left, right, and bottom. You can choose to specify a border for just a particular part of your screen. For example, we could say we wanted the border to be just at the top, we say border top. And this border will be applied only to the top of our document. So we now have a border just at the top, not at the left, not at the right, not at the bottom. We could also say border top, border bottom, 20 pixels, solid. Let's save that and go back and see it. Now have a border at the top and at the bottom. So we could also do the same thing. Border left and 20 pixel solid gray. So now have a border at the left, and we could do the same thing. Border right. Border right. So these are all properties that you could play with. Sorry, let's not call it gray. Let's say red this time. Save it. I will now have. Or we could have borders having different colors. So let's say this is green. Let's say this is blue. Let's say this is green. So we have our borders with different colors. You can be that playful and that creative and see what you can get at the end of the day All right, so that was just playing around with borders. But I did not want to kind of borders on my website, so I'll just take all of this out and say border. So when you say border 20 pixel solid gray, so what does it do? It applies the border to both the top, the left, the right, and the bottom. Now, from having discussed borders, now let's discuss something that is really, really important that you understand in your journey in CSS. And what is that? Margin and padding. But before we continue, let's reduce this to about 40 pixels because it's been too big. It's now really small. Now, what's margin? A margin in CSS is a space that exists outside an element. Right now we have a margin and padding of 0 attached to our body element. That's the whole HTML body has a margin and padding of 0. That's why the div that has a border is touching both ends of my screen and at the top, because it is taking a margin and a padding of 0. Now let's see what margin is and let's see what padding is by explanation, not just by talking about it. So margin, first of all, is a space that exists outside an element. Let's add some margin around this element. Let's say I want to have a margin of 30 pixels. Remember, pixels, px for pixels is the tiny dot on the screen as the unit of measurement, one of the units of measurement in CSS. Save that, go out to our browser, refresh and see. So now our div, which was originally taking our full screen, is now smaller because it is taking 30 pixels to the left, to the right, to the top, and to the bottom. You might not see the margin on the bottom because there's no element outside there, so it wouldn't make you will not really see that. But if I add another element there, you will probably see it. So let me just go and copy that div again. Copy this and paste it below. So there are 2 of those divs. I just doing this so you can see. Yeah, so you can now see that there's a padding, a margin rather, of 30 pixels here, left, bottom, right, top, and left. Now, what if you didn't want to have margin on all sides? Just like border, we could have. Let me comment this out. I don't know if I mentioned yesterday, but you can actually comment out your code. Let's say you don't want to remove it. You're going to make use of it later, but you don't want to appear on your site at that moment. All what you need to do is do this. Start from where you want to begin to comment it out. Now your browser does not read the codes that are commented out. You add lowercase, exclamation sign, that, and then where you want to stop commenting, dash greater than, then you save it and we go back to our browser and refresh. Our browser does not read the second line code, but it's still there in our code though. We didn't delete it, it's still there, but just that it's commented out, it's been cleared off. Except we take away the comment tags, that's when our browser can now see it again. So suppose you want to have not just margin all round, because when you specify properties like margin, border, padding, it takes it the full width, both top, bottom, left, and right. But at some point, you might want to have a margin just at the left, you might want to have a margin just at the right, maybe. So we could do something like, let's say we want to have a margin just at left and right. We could say margin left 30 pixels, margin right 30 pixels. So see what happens when we go back to our code and refresh. Now there is no margin at the bottom anymore. There's no margin at the top, but the margin exists at the left and the right. So if we go back and uncomment this out, let's take this comment out and see what it looks like. You found that the two divs are now staying just next to each other. That's because okay, so the two Ds are not staying next to each other. That's because there is no margin both at the bottom and the top. So you can go back there and add margin just round about, so we see very well. Margin 30 pixels, so it looks good. Go back and refresh this, so you now have margin both top, bottom, left, and right. Alright, so I want to comment this out, so I don't really want to anymore. Alright, that's fine. So padding very briefly. Padding. So padding, since margin is a space outside of an element, padding now is the space that exists inside an element. So you know how when we are much younger and our parents buy for shoes that are oversized, they'll say, I'll give something to put inside, like pad the shoe. So what those things we're doing was we're just picking up some space inside that shoe. It's a great example though, but we're gonna make it so we can understand it better. So let's add some padding to our div and see what it looks like. Now I added a margin of 30 pixels, look at the padding of 30 pixels. Alright. Yeah. So we now have, if you look at it carefully, let's comment this out. If you look at it before now, the text, the paragraph P was touching the border at this end, but not at this end, because it's floating to the left by default. And then there was no space in between it. But when we added the padding, we now had some more space. We now had the padding, that space inside the box now. 30 pixels to the left, 30 pixels to the right, to the bottom, and to the top. Alright, so that explains padding, margin, and border. I'm going to talk about background images and backgrounds right now. But before I continue, let's see if there's any question regarding padding and margin. Any question regarding padding and margin?
Do we have any questions? I hope this thing does not look difficult. I assure you it is not difficult, man. I know some of us have seen this thing for the very first time, and it all looks like some really complicated kind of thing. It is not, right? Before he goes to the next section and talks about your, how to do your background, how to style your images, right? What I want to say is that all you need to do is practice. And yesterday I talked about how that, if you really want to start a career profession with this, you really want to go for it, every day ensure you do something, right? Sit like you're trying to explore something new and interesting, and something which is not boring, right? So every day, if you can put 20 minutes, 30 minutes, if you can put an hour, that's fine. If you put 2 hours, that's fine, right? So it's not difficult at all. You just have to get the basics and then start to practice all that. Yeah, so you can go on, please.
Okay, so I'm just trying to do something real quick. Trying to put an image into my image. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, so we want to talk about background images or backgrounds. in general. And before we do that, I'm going to talk about background color. So you can add a background color to anything and make it look just like what you want it to look like. Let's still do that with our first div. So let's add a background color of, just by typing in background color, or let me make it black. So just call it black. I'll go back. Where is it? Come back here and refresh. And now our first div now has a background color of black. We can't see our text anymore. That's because our text door had the color of black as well. So let's turn this to white. So let's see it. Oh, that's by the way, we didn't style our paragraph. So let me say that my first div P. Hope it's not confusing. Font size 15 pixel. Text align center. Font family wants to be sans serif. So I'm gonna say maybe the same font. Color, very important. Color white. So I'm feeling like I'm too fast. Okay, so one last thing you can do. See how the text is really small and staying really close to itself. Suppose we want to have some space in between the first line and the second line. What do? We can add a property called line height. And say maybe 25 pixel. 25 pixel. Save it. We go back and refresh. I'll see that there's now some spacing between the text at the top and the next paragraph. Alright, so I'm done with that. Let's go add a background image now. Alright, right under this div, we'll add another div class. Let's call this BGIMG. Short for background image. Close the div. I always like to enclose all my elements in a container, sort of. So let me add the image tag now. IMG source, like where is this file on your computer? So you add equal to double braces. My browser is already showing me. My editor is already showing me where I can get the file inside the folder IMG. It's one.png. You can add an alt text. Alt text are the short description about that image that appear if maybe if you start seeing your site for the first time and then you have a bad network and it's not able to load your image. Instead of just showing a broken image there, you could show the alt text. Maybe let's call this my new image. We close our image tag. A point to notice this: the image tag and the link tag are one of those tags that do not have a closing tag. They don't have something like this. They don't have something like this IMG, but rather it just has closing like this one. So let's see if I can see our image, how it looks on our screen. And boom, we have this very big image. Not making any sense. It takes the whole width of the screen. We want to resize it and see how we can fit it into the big one. To just swollen out and taking our entire screen. So by default, when you add an image, the browser takes the full width and height of that image. The image was so large to fill it up in the screen. It was really small to fit it somewhere in our screen. But we want it to be fitted to us. We want it to be all large and big. Let's not forget the image is inside a container. So at this point now, I'll introduce the width and height. So that was called the class name is bg-img. So in our CSS, say .bg-img, and of course curly brace. To add a width, let's say we wanted to have a width of 100%. That means take the entire screen, do not overflow. Right now the image is so big it overshoots out of my screen. That's why you can see this scroll bar at the bottom here, because the image is so big. We are saying no, we don't want it to be so big, rather I want to stay within our screen. Take 100%, and let's give it a height as well. A height to set how tall the image will be, and you can say take a height of 70 VH. VH stands for vertical height, or we could say 8, just so we see our image very well. Now when you do this, it doesn't guarantee that your image will come out looking all great. So let's take that and see what I mean. Like, it still stays just the way it is. It doesn't make any change. That's because we have to kind of force it to stay within its container. So if the image is inside a container that is taking a width and height of 100% and a height of 80 VH. Let's do something real quick. I oftentimes use borders to test to debug and see where something is not very right. So I add colors and if you look at it carefully, I don't know if you could see my screen, but you see a border that runs, stops somewhere, goes, and it doesn't. Oh. Sorry guys, I'm out of power here. I'll be back shortly, but I can still be talking without the video. I don't know if you don't mind. The rating that you're still seeing my screen. Alright, so to force my image to stay within its container, I would have to do something like this. Say the bg-img, and I'll now call the image element, img element. Remember, I'm calling the parent now the bg-img, which is the parent of that image, and I'm calling the image element. So I'll say img as the image selector. Add a curly brace, and then what I'm going to do now is say take the width of 100% and a height of 100%. What does this mean? I'm telling my image, your parent, your container has a width of 100%, a height of 100%. So you too are of 80 VH. So you, the image, you must stay within your container. Don't go outside. Don't overflow and go outside your container. So when I refresh this out, see my image now not so big as it was anymore. It now stays within this width and height. I think I will have to comment this out so we could see our image better. Okay. So this is now our image staying within the width and height of its container. So if I came to my CSS and I said, oh, I want to have a height of 90 VH, I save that and look and see it. The image is now bigger. The image is now staying within its container, unlike when I didn't have to specify the width and the height of it. And that's one thing we could do with images. Now, suppose we wanted to have that image as a background image, just like we have we had color as a background color. We just want it to be an image element. We want it to be a background image. You can also do that with CSS. And how do we do that? Let me comment the image out. Now we have just the BG image element, the BG image. I'm going to take this out as well because no longer there, or I still need it to comment it out. After specifying the width and height of the BG image, the div, I have to specify some background properties. So I'll say I want to have a background image this time, and to specify a background image, you must add a URL. URL simply means Uniform Resource Locator. So where is that image in my computer? How do I locate that image? So to do that, you type the URL and then the closing and opening braces. You add, you can choose to add quotes, single quotes, and then you now locate that image on your computer. So that image is inside a folder called img. So a folder called img. So img /1.png. Whenever you're adding images, don't forget to always add the image extension name. So every file on the computer has an extension name. If you're a music, it will be .mp3. If you're a video, it could be .mp4. If it's a picture, it could be .png, .jpg, .gif. So if I did something like this, just one, the image name without the extension, my browser is not going to know what I'm talking about. Like, what is one? One must be something. One must be a picture. One must be a music. One must be a video. One must not just be its name alone. So don't always forget to add the file's extension. Now, when you add the background image, there are other background properties that you should add as well to make it appear just as expected on your screen. And one of that is a background size. And background size has a couple of values that you might be interested in. You could say one is the automatic contain cover. Cover simply means take the entire space of the screen. That's what I always like to use a cover. Also have to add a background position. Background position. I like to put that at the center. Give it the value of center. If you put it at the top, the bottom, left, and right, we'll try different positions and see how it looks like. Let's start with center. Also add a background repeat. Background repeat. So you can, most times images can duplicate itself. So if you see if your background size to be covered and the image size is not so big as befitting your screen size, what happens is CSS automatically duplicates that image to cover your entire screen. Because you say you want to have a background size of cover, but in most cases you don't want that to happen. You don't want one image showing 2-3 times on your screen. So you can force that and say, oh, background repeat, no repeat. So even though the image size is not as large as your screen size, it will stretch the image to fit your screen. So having added these properties, background image, background size, background position, background repeat, let's go see it for ourselves and see what we have on our screen now. And now see, we now have a background image that fits our screen. This is actually added in your CSS, not in your HTML. We'll make it 100%, 100 VH. That means take 100% or 100% width and then 100% height and fill up the entire screen. We will now have our image filled up in our screen. Yeah, so that's that for backgrounds. I don't know, any question before I go back to something else. I want to talk about positions right now.
Okay, do we have any questions? Do we all understand? Can we respond? Any questions? Do we all understand?
Fatayo,
Yes, sir.
Victor, Adewoye, Jessica, Ilo.
No question, sir.
You understand, right?
Yes, sir.
That's good. Okay, so
Yes, sir.
yeah, I think you can go on, please.
Okay, so um, let's now talk about position, how to position elements on the screen. So there are certain times you see elements not properly or positioned in different ways. Sometimes some things are put into the left, some to the right, just like how we are seeing our screen right now, where we're seeing, I don't know how you're seeing my screen, but I'm seeing you're presenting to everyone at the top, and then your names are all appearing from end to end. Okay, so I would have to comment this out. Okay, I can still work with this. Alright, so let me take out all these properties, save it, go back to my browser and see what it looks like. Empty screen, that's what I want to see. Now there are different types of position in CSS. We have the relative position, we have the fixed position, we have absolute position, and we have sticky position, as well as static. So I'm going to explain them with examples. So the first one is the relative position. So by default, an element is always placed relative to the viewport. So if I have, you give this a width of 100%, a height of 60 vertical height. Let me give it a border so I could really see a border of 2 pixel solid red. Okay, so we can see that on the screen. I think I should increase this a bit to 5 so it's a bit more visible. Okay, so we have this, and this is position relative to the viewport. What's the viewport? The viewport is our window, what we can see now. So it's nicely and neatly placed on the screen. Alright, so that's what relative position is all about. The one that is going to be a bit tricky is absolute. The absolute position. So to explain that better, I'll have to add another element inside this element so I can explain that my own. So I'm going to add another div to class. I can call it inner div maybe. You can actually give classes to basically anything, any name rather. They are not predefined names per se. We use any name that pops in your head at the time. But the right thing to do is always use classes that relate to what you mean, so that you can always remember when you're referring to it. Because you could be creating a website that you could have maybe 3,000 lines of code, and you want to use things that you can easily remember. So for example, if there's a section that is about, let's say you're creating a website for a school, and there's a section that is for parents, you can call that section parents, so that when you see, let's say you see an error, then you want to pay attention to that. You can easily remember that this section was for parents, and you use the name parents to style it, or as a root div name. Just a mnemonic so you can easily remember. Right, that's by the way. So we're talking about absolute position. So absolute position is position relative to the nearest positioned ancestor, instead of being position relative to the viewport. So the absolute position is actually it actually stays within or closest to its ancestor. What does ancestor mean here? Now, if you look at the inner div is inside a bg-img. So let me go give it some styling so you could see it on the front. So let's call the ancestor first, which is bg-img dot inner dash div. Okay, so I'll give it a width of let me just make it 350 pixels and a height of 350 pixels. Let me give it a background color of purple. Let's go see if we have it. And that's inner div there. It's inside an ancestor. The ancestor is the one with the blue line, the red line all around it. I think it's too big, so just make it 250. 250 width and height of 250. Alright. I see a smaller box now. Now it's staying within its container. Let me make this 90 so there's more space for it to play around. Now the inner div is staying within the bg-img. It's staying within its container, so it's positioned relative to its ancestor. By default, it will start at the top. By default, take a position of top and left of 0. So let's play with the absolute position and see what it looks like. Now to manipulate this, to give it an absolute position, first the parent must take a position of relative. Because this is going to be position relative to this. This is the child, this is the parent. So this is going to have an absolute position relative to the parent. So the parent must have a position that is relative. So let's say position absolute. We must specify some position from the top and then from the left. So we want it to have, let's say, from the top, we want it to move 500 pixels, and then to the left as well 500 pixels. Why did we say left? And why did we say left top? That's because the box by default, that's the inner box which is purple, is positioned just at the top and the left. So when we said that, give it an absolute position, and then we say go 500 pixels to the left and go 500 pixels from the top. Let's take that's what it looks like. Boom, and it now flies away from its parent. Okay, let's make that a bit smaller. Do something real quick. Okay. Okay, so our box now moves some miles away from where it was originally, the top and the left. Suppose we wanted it to stay maybe at the bottom and maybe at the left. So I'm back. We're still trying to look at position, an absolute position, and relative position. Okay, so let's refresh that. Why? I don't know. Can you all see my screen?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so just like earlier, what I did now. So before now, it was had a left position of 300. Okay, so what's basically happening here is this. This box, the inner box, is positioned relative to its ancestor. The position it's taking now is related to the box where it's inside. Suppose I wanted it to stay just at the bottom or at the right. Instead of saying left, I could change this to right. And I'll make this 0 pixel and change this to bottom. Okay, so these are all properties that you use when trying to position an element. So it now stays at the far right within its own window. So that's sort of relative positioning. It is staying within its ancestor. Remember, the ancestor stays within its viewport. So the main window here, let me just give the background color so you can see it better. What color? Background color. Just use one of these red colors. Salmon. All that is. Yeah. So this is now staying. It's now staying. Let me take out the border so you can see very well. Now this is relative. The salmon, the BGIMG has a salmon color, is staying relative to the original viewport. It's taking the entire window. The margin and the height is 100%. And now inside it is another box that we want to position in a certain way. We want to position it in a particular part of the screen. Maybe somewhere to the left, somewhere to the right. So originally, by default, if you take these two out, it will float up to the top, left and right. That's where absolute position always starts from. But we don't want that to happen. So we want it to stay at the bottom and at the right this time. So we now specify a bottom, say 0 pixel, right 0 pixel. We save that and then refresh and we see it moving to where we specified it to be. All right, the last one, not the last one for the last, still on positioning is the fixed position. So sometimes on the website you notice a particular div or element having a fixed position. It stays in a particular part of the screen. It doesn't move even when you scroll. So let's try to add an element and make it have some fixed position. Okay, so now let's increase the height of this so you can have some scroll. Let's say it is 400 vertical height. Refresh that, it scrolls. So you see it stays at the left and at the bottom. Now let me give this some fixed position. Let's say I want to have a position of fixed. Still that our box. Let's reduce the width and the height so you can see some difference to it. Let's give it, let's say it wants to be at the top, but top of 200, no, 200 is too much, 150 pixel and still right 0. Let's save it and see what it looks like. So now it's taking a fixed position. So even when we are scrolling, I don't know if you can see my screen that my window is actually scrolling. So if I had something on my screen, let me go back and check or on. so I could see the scroll effect. Now it's now staying in front of this. Okay, let's take it down a bit. Let's say I want it to have, this is 350 maybe, top of 350, so it does not collide with this. When you scroll, you see it takes a fixed position, it doesn't scroll to anywhere. So that's fixed position. Very briefly, we've talked about relative position. And we say an element is positioned relative to its viewport. That means it stays in line with the browser window. The viewport is simply the browser window. And then it could also, an element can be positioned relative to the nearest ancestor. What that means is this, like this is our box before, we could give it an absolute position. That means it will stay within the ancestor, which is the first box having the salmon color. And then we can now play with wherever I want it to be. Maybe want it to be floated to the left or to the right, or we need to do at the bottom or the top. What we need to do is just specify particular number in pixel and say left, maybe left this amount, right this amount. Let's say we wanted it to be away from the right a bit, say 30 pixels from the right. And if you refresh that, you see that it's taking 30 pixels away from the right. But now it has a fixed position. It doesn't shift across the screen. That's what fixed position is. All right, let's know if you all have questions regarding position.
Do you have any questions, please? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions?
So far we talked about font, we talked about padding, margin, border, we talked about background images, and all. Talked about position. So I would like to know, there must be a question at this point before we move on. We're going to talk about the last thing, which is shorthand and display. Yeah?
I think you can go on, please. There's no question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that's fine. So very briefly, I will talk about shorthand. Just like the name implies, you can actually, this actually applies to margin and padding. Oh, before we continue, I just remembered something I didn't talk about. So you know how sometimes, like the box we have on the screen is a cornered box. It has all sides of it well cornered. With CSS, you can choose to have the edges a bit curved and choose to have the edges looking nicer and looking better than what we are seeing here. So how can we make that happen? So I'm going to play around with this box a bit so we see. Let's just take it to the right, to the left, so to the left so I can see it better, because it's a bit difficult looking at it from the right. I'll do two things to it that are a bit not magical, but just to enhance the beauty. So first thing first is add a border radius to it. What does that do? It gives it a radius around the box. Instead of just being a clear-cut box, it's going to have a curve at the edges. I could say border radius of 10 pixels. Save that and let's see, refresh. See, the box now has a curve around the edges. Or you can increase that just to see how curved it could be. So I can now say 30 pixels. Save that, and the higher the number, the more the curve. What we wanted to be a complete circle. all I need to do is say border radius 50%. And I'll save that. To make a complete circle, you must have the width and the height must be exactly the same. So on our screen now we have a complete circle. Yeah, but that's not what we want to do. We don't have exactly on our screen. Let's say 30 pixels. All right. So one last thing before we move out of background and all. Now you can have more than one color. We have just this purple color here. We could choose to have more than just a purple color in this our box. Now how do we do that? We can add a value attribute called linear gradient. I want to specify more than one color. So I want to say where is the color coming from what part? Is it coming from the left or from the right, or what angle? We want it to come from the left, so say to left. Put a comma there. Let's add a color. Let's add two colors: red, comma, purple. To separate each of them with a comma. And let's go see how our things look like now. Oops, it's an error in our code. Sometimes you're writing a piece of code, you know it very well, but all of a sudden it's just not working as expected or as planned. What do you do in times like that? You become a detective and you begin to troubleshoot and find out why.
It's 20 hours.
Oops. All right, so just
Okay. Okay, I think we've come to the end of tonight's class. CSS. One thing I mentioned yesterday is that your CSS is very exciting, right? For a lack of time, I'll show us a couple things online, right? People have used CSS to create structures, right? And when you combine this color, that color, and all that, combine your shapes, right? So CSS is very exciting.